guys, in this tutorial we will go over two standard charts that you may want to consider if you want to visualize categorical data. So let's get to it. So for this tutorial we're going to use a new data file and it's called credit risk. So just to give you a little bit of background on this file, so it has information related to loans, okay, and different pieces of information related to the loan, and then at the end, the target variable is loan status, and there are two values for it. So then 0 if the loan hasn't been approved, 1 if the loan has been approved. So we're gonna use that data file. We're going to read that into the Jupyter notebook, and then we're going to create two visualizations of that of one of the variables in that data file. So let's start as usual by importing pandas. So import pandas as PD, and then in this case, because we're going to be visualizing data, so we're going to use the Matplotlib library. So this is another of those Python libraries that you must know, okay? So it is a library that allows you to create charts out of your data. So import Matplotlib by plot as plt, okay? So those are the two libraries that I need. In this case, what I'm going to do is the name of the data file is here is credit risk dataset. So that's the one that we're going to use. So reading the data. So I'm going to call it df equals to pd read csv, and it's credit risk. Okay. Oops. Let me close this one here. Yeah, df head. Okay. All right, so then this is the data. So we're taking a peek at the first 5 observations. So then here we have information related to the person, age. So that's the person that is applying, the age of the person that is applying to the loan, the income, home ownership, employment length, what is the intent of the loan, so personal education, medical reasons. Each loan typically in the financial world, loans they are categorized as being, you know, risky loans, not a risky loan, and typically they use letters for that. So A, B, C, D, E. So A, that means that it's not a risky loan, and there is a high chance that that loan will be approved. And you know, E's or E's or D's are loans that they are risky, so then they are less likely to be approved. Amount of the loan, the interest associated to that loan, what is the percentage of the loan with respect to the income, default on file, whether that if that person, the person that is applying for the loan, has any previous loan that have defaulted, credit length history, and then here is the loan status. So then, you know, from the machine learning perspective, this will be the target variable. Okay, so for this particular data set, this is a binary classification problem. Okay, so 0 means that the loan hasn't been approved, 1 that means that the loan has been approved. Okay, so when it comes to categorical data, and in some sense, loan status falls under that category because we have two labels, 0 and 1. So for data exploration purposes, so basically the first thing that you would like to see is what we call in statistics as a frequency table. Okay, so if we want to create a frequency table out of loan status, we will do the following. So creating a frequency table of loan status. So it will be df loan status and then value count, and then that will create the frequency table. So this, again, this is a very simple table that show us how many times each of the labels appears in the data. So we have two labels, 0 and 1. Label 0 appears 25,473 times, and 1 appears 7,108 times. So obviously, this falls under the category that we call imbalanced data set, because the frequency associated to one of the labels, which in this case is 0, is much larger than the frequency associated to the other label. Okay, so this is just looking in terms of raw values, but then instead of raw values, you want to see percentages, which is something something that, especially in industry applications, practitioners are really accustomed to see percentages. So we can quickly adjust this to show percentages as follows. So then here we will just do normalize equals to true. And now instead of seeing raw numbers, it shows us percentages. So then again, basically what we see here is that, roughly speaking, 78% of the data has a label 0, and 21% of the data, or 22% of the data, has a label 1. Okay, so these are just, some good summary tables or summary tools in general that will allow you to get familiar with the data. Okay, however, especially when it comes to delivering insights, so it is better that instead of showing just numbers, just to create a chart out of that. Okay, so then that way stakeholders can have a better understanding of what's going on with their data. Okay, and when it comes to categorical data, so there are two common approaches, or two common graphical tools that they are very popular. Number one is bar chart, and number two is pie chart. So first, let's create a bar chart out of long status. Okay, so let me add some labels here. So bar chart. So bar chart is very simple, as the name suggests, is a chart that has bars in it. Okay, and in essence, it's going to there are going to be bars, and typically the taller the bar is, so then that means that more data falls under that category. That's basically it. Okay, so let's quickly create this with Matplotlib. So we start with pickaxe plt subplots. I like to use subplots because it gives me freedom to customize the plot. And then here I can specify the size of the figure. Big size. Let's use an 8x6. It should be enough. All right, so then here we do ax bar long status, and then let's use normalize equals to true here. So what we're doing here is we're extracting the index first, the labels. Okay, and then after that, we're also extracting the actual percentages associated to those labels. So then if we run these, so this is what we get. Okay, it's a very simple chart. Okay, now let's start adding the labels here, or let's customize this a little better. So ax set, the X label is going to be the longest status. So this is the longest status. Now let's add more. So the Y label is going to be proportion. Now we see proportion here. Okay, let's add a title, proportion of longest status, and PLT show. So let's add the semicolon here, just to get rid of this text right here. Now it's gone. Okay, so basically this is just a very simple chart. Again, here we have a bar around 0, here we have a bar around 1. Again, the height of the bar represents how much data it falls under that category. So then we know that most of the data falls under the 0 category, so that's why this bar is taller compared to this one right here. Let me make this a little bigger so you can see it there. So yeah, so it can easily give you an idea about proportions and what label gets has most of data and so on. Okay, and one of the reasons why this chart is very easy to understand is because, again, we can all compare, tall and short all day long. Okay, so you don't need to have a background in mathematics or a PhD in mathematics to understand what a bar chart is showing. Okay, and again, if you're visualizing data associated to a categorical variable that has 3, maybe 4, or maybe more labels, so you will have more bars, basically. Okay, so this is just, again, a very simple, very popular chart or very popular tool that practitioners rely on when it comes to visualizing categorical data. Now let's go to the next one. Another popular one in the industry is the pie chart. Okay, so it's a very old visualization tool. Okay, that basically visualize the data as being as being shown as a circle that has a slice in it. Okay, so if you ask me, to me it looks more like a pixel than a pie chart, but I guess when this particular visualization tool was created, so pixel was not around, so then the only thing similar to it, or the only thing that they could use as a reference was a pie. So that's where the name comes from. I think that is my that is my take on it. Okay, so let's create a pie chart out of long status. Okay, so we will start very similar: fix x plt subplots, then fix size 8 by 5. Let's use 8 by 5. Okay, we're gonna be using yeah, so first let's do it in a few steps. So first, let's extract the labels. The labels are going to be the index of the frequency table. So this is the relative frequency table. And by doing the dot index, so we are extracting the index. So then that means going back to this, right? If this is my frequency table, so we're extracting these labels 0 and 1. Those are the indexes. Okay, and then we first extract the indices, and then we're going to start the actual data associated to those labels. So typically we will call that sizes, and that instead of use index, we will use values in that case. And then after that, what we're going to do is we're going to use the command pi from Matplotlib. First, the first argument is we need to enter the actual data. So it will be sizes, and then the labels that we want to use. So it's sizes without an F. Then labels equals to labels, and then if we want to add if we want to show the percentages in the slices, so we will need to, so before we do that, let's just run this to see what we get. Okay, a very simple pie chart. Again, this is called a pie chart, but then again, if you ask me, it looks more like a pixel, right? So then we will have as many slices as labels as we have in the data. In this case, we see 2 colors because there are only two labels, right? 0 for non-approved and 1 for approved. Okay, and it's obviously that in this particular case, blue represents the 0 label because that's the bigger slide, and orange represents the 1 label because that's the smaller slide. All right, so then now let's customize this chart a little bit more. So let's add the label, the actual percentage to be shown on those slides. So that will be out of PC. And then here, let's display it as follows. So then this is just something that I want to display only 1%. Okay, and then let's remove this for now. So let's see what happens there. Now we see 1.1F%. So yeah, I need one here and I need one here. All right, now it's showing the actual percentages, right? So then blue is pretty much 78.2%, and that's what we see here, right? That's the percentage associated to 0, and 21.8, that's the percentage associated to 1, and that's what we're seeing here, okay? So that's how you can display the actual percentage. Now, we can customize this a little bit more, so we can add colors if we want. So let's add let's add, let me remove this a little bit. Let's use green and red, for example. Let's remove this for now. Let's run it. Okay, so now it changed the color. So all right, and then what else we can do here? So we can also do the following. Star angle, let's use 90 and see what happens. Now it starts here, so then you rotate the pie chart. We can also add another command here, which is called explode equals to explode 0.1 and 0, for example. And now see what I'm doing here. Explode. Okay. And then we see that the pretty much is just separating the two slides just to highlight this one. Okay. That's, one way, or just one extra cosmetic that you may want to consider for your pie chart. And in order just to get rid of all of these, I typically what I do is just BLT show semicolon, and that gets rid of that. Or you can just add a semicolon here at the end. That will also do it. Okay. If we want to add a title to the chart, we can also do it in this type of fashion. So we can do something like this. Just copy that into here, and that will do it. So you can see it, but then it's really hard to see it here. So if you want to see the plot, you can click on that, and then you will see it. Okay, and notice that it's also showing the label associated to 1 and the label 0 that is associated to green. Okay. All right. So those are two common charts that you may want to consider to visualize categorical data. Bar chart by far is the most popular one in industry application. Again, because you are just looking at tall bars, short bars, and we can easily compare those. And another common one is a pie chart. Okay. I haven't gone into all the different combinations that you may want to consider to visualize your data. So I just show you the basics, but again, so those tools or those charts in Matplotlib, they have more arguments that you may want to play with just to add more customization in terms of the font associated to the title and things like that. But again, one thing that I always recommend, especially when it comes to visualization, the simpler the charts are, the easier to understand they are. You don't want to add too many colors, you don't want to add too many labels, too many things to your chart, because at that point it becomes a little bit complicated to see what's going on. Okay, and that shouldn't be the purpose of the chart. The chart should be simple, that it gets right to the point, and so then that way everyone can understand it. Okay, so again, if you have categorical data, here I show you two approaches or two tools that you may want to consider to visualize it: bar chart and pie chart. Okay, so that's all I have for this video. See you on the next one.